Talk to me about the emotions you went through when you finally signed the papers and got your keys.
Excitement, elation, I think, relief. I think relief is probably the biggest one, because it's all very nerve-wracking, something you haven't done before. I mean, I've relocated over the years many times, you know, from where I grew up. Each time I settle very easily wherever I moved to, but I just felt really at home here, and we both did. It feels like a natural progression in our lives, you know, and we love the area. The Bastide towns and villages around here are just wonderful. There's so many places to go to. So yes, I'm still excited, and I'm buzzing, you know, absolutely buzzing with the whole thing.
Talk to me about the physical move when you actually came out here.
Okay, the physical move, one problem or one worry we had was the cat. We've got a cat, and we wanted to bring him over, obviously. And how are we going to do it? How are we going to go about it? So we looked up what was needed. The cat needed a rabies injection, which only lasts 4 months. So if we were to take him back after 4 months' time, we'd have to get another rabies injection to take him back to the UK. We're intending to keep him here permanently, so because it's such a long haul for him. But it worked really well in the end. We got the ferry over. We had a room, so the cat got to stretch his legs and have a little runabout in the cabin. He was very nervous and a bit freaked out, but that wasn't too bad. There was sort of a 7-hour journey. Then back in the van, we drove down, and he was wonderful. He travelled really well. I had a sort of a small dog cage next to me. I drove down in a van, so I had a double seat next to me. And he just sat in there and occasionally spoke to me, slept on and off. Occasionally sort of got him wanted to get out, but you know, he just chatted. I bought a CD of cat music, relaxing cat music, which I think did help a lot, because a couple of times I turned it off and he sort of squeaked as if to say, can you put that back on again? So, but it went much better than I thought. Yeah, I didn't think it would go as easy as it did. Yeah, so as I say, we had to go to the vet to get a rabies injection. We also had to get what used to be called pet passport, but now is it's just documentation. So it's about 5 sheets that the vet signs and stamps to say that the cat's healthy, that, you know, its history and everything. And you have to bring all that with you, along with all your travel documents. So you've got to be really well prepared. It's everything at hand. You know, you don't know what they're going to ask for. Passport, not immigration, but you know, the cat. It was mainly my passport, and the cat's information is what I had to produce. But it all went very smoothly. Yeah, they're all very helpful at these kiosks, etc.
Talk to me about the van. How full was it?
The van was rammed, absolutely rammed with all sorts of stuff, mainly clothes and bedding. But you keep finding when you're finally packing up, you keep finding, well, I've got to take that, I've got to fit that in. So there was bits rammed in here, there. I had to bring tools over because I knew there were going to be lots of bits and pieces, you know, putting pictures up, assembling stuff. So I had tool kits, I had bedding, clothing, daft things like a air fryer, you know, bits and pieces from the kitchen, kettles, all sorts of toasters, all the paraphernalia that you don't really think about because it's the last thing. You're still using them up to the day you move, and so they're the last things that get packed, you know. And yeah, there was breathing room only in the van, I would say.
Deborah, talk to us about your journey down with the move.
So we drove down in convoy from our home to Portsmouth. Obviously we came over to Caen on the ferry, excellent. we had chosen to do a day to evening time ferry because we thought it'd be nice and quiet to drive through the night for the cat in particular. But about 40 minutes outside Caen, my car broke down, and although the car was still functioning, my back indicators were not working, and of course I didn't feel comfortable driving on a motorway without indicators. Not safe. So we had to call the European assistance line and get some help. So we broke down, I broke down at 11 o'clock. Chris was still with me with the cat, but I wasn't picked up by the recovery vehicle until about 3 o'clock in the morning. So our biggest stress then was how the cat was coping with this, because he'd been in the cage since we left home in the Cotswolds all the way down, then in the ferry, then back in the cage again, and he was very, very well behaved, but I'm sure it was quite stressful for him. Anyway, we ended up in a hotel in the middle of the night, not very far away from where we broke down, and Chris got a couple of hours sleep, and then he headed off down to the house because the removal company were due to come on the Wednesday. This was the Sunday night, and so I stayed behind, obviously, and my car had been taken to a garage, but unfortunately the next day was a public holiday, so of course nothing was going to happen, wasn't going to get fixed that day, and I was told you're probably going to be here for 2 or 3 nights before the car gets fixed for you. So I mean, that was obviously deeply frustrating. You're desperate to get to your house and be there for particularly for me, because I'm a bit of a control freak. So of course I was thinking about the removal company coming, and me not being there to tick everything off and make sure everything was okay. So I was quite anxious about that. But anyway, the transpired that the company that had picked up the car couldn't fix it, and so it had to be taken to a different garage 40 minutes away from where I was. And so I had to go through, it was a bit of a baptism of fire, I suppose, in terms of having to use French. My French is very basic, and in the hotel they didn't speak English, so I had to really make an effort to speak French, and that was quite difficult. And the guy that picked me up in the recovery vehicle didn't speak any English at all, so we were really struggling to communicate with each other. And it was me and him in the middle of nowhere at his garage, at one point waiting for a taxi to pick me up to take me to the hotel, which Chris and the cat were already at. And in the end, they couldn't get me a taxi because it was the middle of the night, middle of nowhere. And so the European recovery folk had to persuade the recovery driver to take me to the hotel in his car, which he did, which was very kind of him. He drove at breakneck speed, I can tell you. It was really quite unnerving to get me to, in a very interesting sort of classic old car. It was quite interesting. But very kind of him, but we were pidgin talking to one another in French and English. So it was one of those moments where you think, oh my God, I really, really need to learn French much better than I have. And I have signed on for French lessons, and in fact I had to do a French lesson in the foyer of this hotel, which was online, so there are 6 of us in the class, and it's online. And so I'm sitting in the foyer with my headphones on doing this, and some of it involves use of your hands. So when you're learning the verbs, we're doing karate chopping to help you to remember your verbs. And the teacher was very impressed that I was prepared to do this in the foyer of a hotel, which I did. So I wasn't embarrassed. I just thought I'd just get on with it. Anyway, it was a good distraction. An hour and a half's French lesson. So yes, it was frustrating, but in the end, obviously the car got fixed on the Wednesday afternoon. Oh, it got fixed, and of course they were then shut for lunch. So I was taken over there in a taxi, which the European assistance did pay for, thank goodness, because it cost €150. got there to pick up the car, it's lunchtime, so I'm desperate to get on the road, but I had to wait 2 hours before I could get on the road. And then, of course, we've got this heat wave going on. So I drove down for 8 hours solid in the heat wave with no air conditioning. I do have a convertible car, but I couldn't take the roof down because the car was filled up, so I couldn't do that. And I had about 4 stops to just keep me going. Finally arrived at our house at 10:30 in the evening, by which time the removal van had also been delayed because they had been loading up the van south of Bordeaux in a thunderstorm. So they could not get to us because that was horrendous for them. They were like 40 metres away from the house, having to transport stuff in this thunderstorm. And in the end, the removal company didn't arrive at our house until 2 o'clock in the morning. And they obviously went to sleep. When we woke up in the morning, they were outside in their enormous truck. Chris had to work with the Marie's office and our immobilier to put barriers up outside our house, and the expectation, of course, had been that the removal company were going to be arriving at a particular time, and so Chris had to keep going back to the Marie's office and say, sorry, they're delayed, and they were incredibly accommodating. And in the end, we were standing outside that night, this is about 12:30 at night, chatting to the guy opposite who runs the Vival little supermarket, and he speaks English luckily, but we were having a laugh at 12:30 in the morning with him saying, are they really coming? Do you think they're going to come tomorrow? And it was like, I think they're coming now, but I don't think they're going to unpack until tomorrow. And in the end, they arrived at 2 o'clock in the morning. We got up in the morning and we had to wake them up. They were in the van. And we woke them up with some breakfast and so on, and then got going with the unloading. But it was a bit of a dramatic start to getting into the house, I must say.
Tell us about the plans for the house.
Well, the majority of the house is done. It doesn't need any work doing to it. The loft needs a lot of work. So that's going to be insulated and boarded. We'll probably turn it into 2 bedrooms. It will be some time before we do that. It won't be immediate, maybe in a couple of years. Big project is the courtyard. So we've got an enclosed courtyard. I want to do a Moroccan theme really. So I want lots of colour in the plants. We're going to put an olive tree, lemon tree. We're growing bougainvillea, wisteria, different flowering plants, climbers up the walls. And just make it a nice, livable area. The beauty of here is that you can sit out there late at night. It's warm. The walls take the sun during the day and they radiate it of an evening. So it's a wonderful place to sit. So that is my big, not adventure, my project. That's the main project for me at the moment, is sorting out the courtyard.
What else for the house, Deborah?
Well, we will be doing quite a lot of painting. So we have got a bit of touching up to do, and obviously you want to make it your own. So we love the house and we love how it's been done up by the people who owned it previously. But there is some work that we would like to do to get it to where we want it to be, really. We've had to buy a few bits and pieces of furniture. We're looking forward to going around the Bracants and finding other bits and bobs to really make this feel like home. In terms of the attic, it's an enormous space, and as Chris was saying, we are looking to have 2 bedrooms up there, and and a sitting area and so on. And one day we'll have grandchildren. We don't have any yet, but one day that will be a really great space for our extended family to be able to use up there. But as Chris has said, our first sort of major project is going to be the garden, and we've got a little barn and a workshop at the back of the courtyard, and getting that all up to speed for you is going to be an important thing too, isn't it? Oh, the other big piece we're going to do, which will be an initial piece of work, is we're going to be changing the windows at the front of our property, because this property used to be a dental surgery up until around about 5 years ago, I think. And so we've got some windows at the front which do look like a shop front, and we would like to change that so that it's more in keeping with the rest of the property. So we've had a really great artisan come round to talk about the ideas for how to do that, and so we're waiting for the quote, and that will be the first piece of work that we will have done, most probably.